Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lifestyle Based Healing Podcast. You got myself, co host Dylan Wong, and my mom here, also co host Robin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Today we're talking about some of the underlying causes, physically speaking, in our bodies that have people kind of stuck and kind of the misconceptions along with that. So it's going to be a really interesting one. Some of those big things we'll talk about in a second, but when it comes to kind of a lifestyle based approach, Mom, I know you had some things you wanted to share.
I do. And so, I like to think about health and lifestyle-based healing as a puzzle. And it takes many different pieces into that puzzle to create this result we want with living well and being well. And so, what I see over and over again when I work with people when they come to me frustrated and now being put on medications or not reaching their goals is that they've been trying one or two things and they ignore a whole bunch of other aspects that I think really are so crucial to getting them to their results. They might be focusing on nutrition, what they're eating, which of course is a part of it. And they might be exercising and they do it in different ratios, based on what they like and what they think is really going to get them the results. They might throw in a trendy detox or something like that. Um, and they sometimes they don't do them long enough. They do them in the wrong ratios. But they're ignoring a whole bunch of other things. And I think that that's what I want to talk to people about today, Dylan, as kind of what are those pieces of the puzzle that they might need to be aware of and start implementing to really get the results that they want. So,
Yeah, and if you're missing these things in your strategy or your approach, then number one, I'd say it's probably not a true lifestyle-based approach. You might have changed your diet or done fitness or done some things like that, but I don't think it would be what we would define as a lifestyle-based approach. And if you're missing them, obviously it's going to be a very uphill battle.
yeah.
It's going to be kind of a loop of short-term wins and then backtracking and then short wins and then backtracking. And if that's your experience, then maybe you've been missing these things.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's why we thought it'd be really important to talk about. So, in that, the first thing I wanted to address was stress. And we live in a very stressful world here in the U.S. Most of us do, and there's different types of stress. And so I thought I'd just kind of illuminate the three types that I wanted to talk about. Physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress. And as we kind of go through this, I want people to think about how those external factors might be affecting their lives and if what they're doing to remedy them. When we work with people, we definitely dive into this and have them start kind of understanding how they are an influence in their overall health. So for physical stress, that might look like you got injured. You were, driving a car, you got in a car accident, you have chronic pain from that neck or back or whatever it might be. And with that comes a lot of inflammation and a lot of stress hormones. It could be that you're working out, which is a wonderful thing. You're told to do that, but often we're left to our own devices, or maybe you hire a trainer and they have their own philosophy. And so you're working out super hard and maybe you're still not getting to your goals. I worked with someone recently who wanted to lose about 10 or 15 pounds, was working out super hard, lifting heavy, pretty much most days of the week, but still could not reach her weight loss goal. And what I know is that when you work out hard like that with no rest and you're not refueling well and those sort of things, that's a lot of stress on your body, a lot of physical stress. And with that comes cortisol, the stress hormone. And that is a hormone that really makes it hard to lose weight. So when we actually dialed back her exercise regimen and tweak the other aspects, not just one thing. Remember, we looked at the stress, we looked at the food, we looked at the sleep, all of those things. It really started getting her to the results she wanted. And so again, it's multiple aspects. You can't just do one thing and hope for the result that you want. Um, Otherwise, it's just not lifestyle based because there's many things that go into our lifestyle.
yeah,
Um,
and that can be super counterintuitive, right?
yeah,
especially that example, like we equate, burning more calories to losing more weight. And, you know, if you're thinking that way, then, you know, and you're not considering the other things that are happening in your body, like the stress impact. This one was physical stress, but of course you're going to learn about a couple of different ones.
Yeah.
Um, that could be a reason why you haven't really made much progress. A lot of people actually come to us in this situation where they're working out several days a week, now wondering why it's not working anymore, and they're not considering some of these things. So just wanted to
Yeah,
point that out.
no, and so like I said, there's and the thing with stress, there's the acute stress, the stress that a traffic jam or something like that, but it's the chronicness of it, it's the how long it's lasting and how frequently and how intensely, those things that really make it difficult to reach your goals. The other stressor that I see is chemical stress, and that's what are we putting into our body or on our body on a regular basis that might be causing some issues. So, if you think about a lot of the toxins that might be on our food or in the air, the two big ones are alcohol and smoking. All right, that are voluntarily coming into our bodies that aren't great for us. It could be the pesticides on our foods, the plastics in our environment that are coming in that we don't realize, or maybe we do, and it could be maybe you're putting cosmetics on your skin that, by the way, get into your body. And so it's all of those chemical stressors. And when we work with people, we do a detox to kind of let your body clean out, so to speak. And one of the ones I see for people is sometimes artificial sweeteners. Okay, that come into your body that are not. I had a client once that had a severe reaction where they'd pass out after consuming this and had done it for years with no results, no poor results. But when we, pulled them out for a while, didn't have any symptoms, and she put it back in and had the symptom, we knew exactly what it was. And so something you might be getting away with or have for a long period of time that you're now seeing symptoms, you got to kind of dive into that and look and see what's causing that. Okay. And so it could be some of these chemical stressors for sure. The other
Yeah,
stress
I
that,
would say with the chemical stressors, yeah, alcohol, obviously tobacco are huge ones. But there are just so many, and it's really
yeah,
hard to know what's affecting our body, what applies to us, because it can be a combination of things. Maybe
yeah,
it's something in your environment plus what you're eating, or a couple things that you're eating. It could be that plus some other behaviors you're doing or other stressors, right? And so it's kind of this big old soup, um,
hmm,
that we kind of have to figure out. Um, but you need to have that awareness first that these things could be triggering issues for you, or causing headwinds. It's pretty hard for someone to actually lose weight or get healthy if they're passing out all the time. That's clearly
yeah.
something that's causing issues with the body. The body's not happy, and so it's kind of hard to feel your best when that's happening or something like that's in your body, right? So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's great. And then the third type of stress would be like emotional stress. And that might look like maybe you're caring for aging parents, or you don't have a job you don't particularly like. You're worried about finances. You have a neighbor that's hard to get along with. Maybe you're raising teenage kids and it's just a stressful period of time. Those are kind of the obvious stressors. The emotional stressors are sort of those ones that we often think about as stress. And even when, you need to start really looking at how are they affecting your health, and are there boundaries that you can set up? I mean, maybe you're that person that really says yes to everything and you take on way too much and you're juggling all these balls and you have no time for yourself, and your body starts revolting in a way. It starts saying, hey, if you don't say no, I'm going to. And some of the symptoms that you might be feeling might be this buildup of this emotional stress. And I think this is really common for a lot of people. Like I said, we live in a stressful world, and I think there's this idea now too of people don't realize that this emotional stress causes illness. And there used to be this very big disconnect between physical health and mental health. And the more I read about this and the more we learn about this, is it's all related. It's all related. You can't ignore one and be well in the other. They have to be considered. All of it falls under this wellness umbrella and this lifestyle-based healing umbrella. And so really you have to kind of dive into those emotions. And, I think when you think about people that struggle with their weight and they are, they tell me they're emotional eaters. I hear this a lot. And, I've heard it said that it's not that we're emotional eaters, we're under feelers. We're not willing to feel our emotions. And so start looking at those ways that it's an under feeling issue, not an overeating issue. We have to kind of start looking at how are these emotions playing into our overall health and how are they causing us stress? Because when you have high stress, you have high cortisol, right? And again, that's not something that's going to help you lose weight or feel good or sleep better. And so that's why we definitely want to pay attention to stress.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that we go towards or gravitate towards when it comes to trying to be healthy, we don't realize, but they actually, in an effort to be healthier, we're actually adding stress to our body. I think of the many diets people go on where they're essentially going at a calorie deficit and they're starving their body. Um, you know, yes, it can work in the short term, but long term, you're not setting yourself up very well, and you're causing stress on the body. So that isn't an easy way. A lot of times, people are doing like elimination diets, trying to get to the bottom of what's causing maybe gut issues, or they're living off of juices or something, and you know, some of these quick fix things can actually be more harmful than good because of all the stress they're adding, and people don't even
Yeah.
really consider that.
Yeah. No, for real. I'd agree with you.
Another
Um,
big umbrella is hormones.
Hormones, yeah, and I think it's really fascinating how there's so many trends. When I started into grad school to become a dietitian, probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, um, gut health was just coming on the forefront. Okay. And now I'm starting to hear so much more about menopause. Women are kind of making this comeback of menopause and really talking about it. And so when people talk about hormones, they automatically go to, hormone replacement or menopause or the female hormones or that sort of thing. Well, when I think about hormones, I look at it from a gut perspective, and really there's so many different types of hormones in our body. And so when they talk about hormones, it's like, well, which one are you talking about, right? Because there's so many different ones, and it really depends on what's ailing you and what do you want to try to fix. Because you think about hormones from thyroids and growth hormone and just all these different types. Your gut hormones, insulin's a hormone. So when you have diabetes, you're thinking about that. And so yeah, for the context of this conversation, I want to reflect a little bit more on gut health hormones because I worked with someone one time, a younger woman who was having a lot of um, cycle issues and not feeling good all the time and low energy and low mood and depressed and just, had chronic digestive issues and all these things. And she really felt like she was perimenopausal and, getting to that point where her female hormones are going to be changing. And what we realized when I started working with her and we started kind of diving into managing her stress and looking at her sleep and looking at how she was eating, all of these things, that, really balancing out her gut health made all the difference in the world for her with her other hormones. So her cycles, her mood, her depression, all of those things balanced out. So with hormones, it's always a balance. Okay, it's always keeping things in balance. That's true with your female hormones. And by the way, men have hormones too, your gut hormones, all of those things, your thyroid hormones. And so you'll realize that that's what it's always about, having things in balance. And your body wants to be in balance, it struggles for that. So I know that gut health is such a big topic now, and it should be because so much of what goes on in our system starts in our gut. And so we really have to kind of dial in, is that in balance? Is that functioning well? Because when it does, everything else falls into place for the most part. Okay. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. And so, if you want to be super healthy and avoid germs, you want to have a good gut health. Makes sense?
Yeah, for me, when we talk about hormones, again, these are broad umbrellas. I think it really helps to make things more concrete, where if we're stressed out, then we have a cortisol imbalance, or if our appetite or our blood sugars are kind of at the root, then we can think of it as, an insulin imbalance or something like that. And it just kind of makes it more tangible and approachable for people. So that's kind of why I like looking at from that perspective. But of course, these things are really interwoven. Um, you know, they fluctuate day to day. It's sort of like this chemical soup that we're in.
Hmm.
And, um, you know, a hormone imbalance could be kind of the root, but oftentimes it's some other imbalance, kind of like you're saying, whether like it's in the gut, that's driving that imbalance, or some of the behaviors that we're doing, or of course what we're eating, all those things can affect the hormone imbalance. And so it sometimes it can be just another symptom, but it definitely helps to kind of think about.
Yeah, I think definitely. Again, it's everything's related. Everything's related. So I think that and the hormones are tricky business, right? There's so many of them. So it takes a little bit to kind of understand how it's being driven. But again, if you're stressed out all the time and you're not sleeping, it makes stands to reason that things are going to get out of balance and you're not eating well, then, you're kind of, again, they're all related. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think menopause is a great example. A lot of people start experiencing these symptoms, and they start, for instance, assigning it, the fact that their hormones are changing, the estrogen is going down, and they go towards like hormone replacement therapies. What's your take on that? Like just trying to get
yeah,
rid of the
yeah.
ancestry.
I'm clearly not an expert in this field at all. People know way more than I do. I can just share my own personal experience with that. Being a woman and going through it, I really felt like, and some people really suffer, they did, but I turned to lifestyle to really manage it. And really was diligent about how I was eating, getting on a really good sleep schedule. And certainly there were nights I didn't sleep well with hot flashes, and you certainly experienced those. But what I noticed is I didn't suffer like my friends did. I just didn't. And I think because I was exercising regularly, I, was really trying to do lifestyle. Or maybe I was just lucky. I don't know. But I just feel like it's a natural process of life. And for me, uh, I just felt like I was going to try to manage it as best I could with lifestyle, and just see where it went. Because I looked at other cultures that didn't suffer like a lot of us do in the US, and I was curious about that. Why? And what I noticed is their lifestyles were very different. And it's like, well, maybe I could model that and see if I could have fewer symptoms. And so it worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, clearly. And if people are out there suffering with that, I really know it can be life altering for so many. And I think there's maybe a role for hormone replacement for those people. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I can just share what I did
Okay,
personally.
well, I would say for me personally, like what we see with clients, like a lot of that stuff can be taken care of, through lifestyle. The person that comes to mind for me is Delina, right? She came in, she wasn't sleeping very well, she had terrible energy, giant mood swings that literally put her spouse on pins and needles, and felt like he was walking on broken glass.
Yeah.
And it
Every
was
month. Yeah.
tons of brain fog. And she was someone that, on the outside looked pretty healthy, right? Took good care of herself. She wasn't like overweight or anything. You know, um, did regular exercise, all that stuff. Kind of was big into nutrition for herself, but just didn't know the whole lifestyle approach as we're talking about. And when she ended up really addressing some of those things, everything kind of turned around for her, and
Yeah.
so many of those things went away. Not completely, so it's not just some magic remedy, but like to the point where it was definitely something super manageable. And she was only like a few months from doing that. And so what I see is that, you know, yes, that change is dramatic. Hormones obviously play a role, but at the same time, I think it's almost like when that change happens, suddenly we're almost exposed for where our body's actually at. Or maybe another way to look at it is that that big change causes a big stress and kind of really tests the limits of our body to hold ourselves together. And by doing lifestyle things designed for us, then we can kind of get that back on path because we see it so often in practice.
We do. And, what I have witnessed with people that I've worked with that have gone on hormone replacement to kind of alleviate some of those symptoms, when they stop it, it comes back with a vengeance, some of those symptoms that they were trying to alleviate. And that's pretty frustrating for them, because they don't want to be on them long term, nor should they be. And yet they didn't get rid of them. This kind of prolonged it for them. So now they're suffering through it at a later age. So um, but it's different for everybody. And she's a great example of, how everything balanced out for her. Again, it's all about that balance, right? So,
Inflammation is another big umbrella.
yeah, inflammation's another big topic that everybody talks about, and with good reason. Again, there's this chronic inflammation that what we're focused on. Acute inflammation is how our body's designed to actually handle illness and injury, but it's the chronicness of it. And so I know, for example, when I had pulmonary issues, I understood why they wanted to put me on the medications. They wanted to bring down the inflammation in my lungs because the longer it's elevated, it causes a lot of damage and tissue damage and that sort of thing. And this is true if you have any lifestyle disease like diabetes, neurological issues, autoimmune issues. A lot of times with inflammation comes pain. And the longer it's up, the more damage it's going to do. So we need to bring it down. The thing is, you know, um, a lot of the lifestyle things that are normal American lifestyle things that we do actually feed into that inflammation. A lot of the foods we eat are inflammatory. A lot of our lifestyle, approaches, that we are living, maybe we're drinking alcohol or smoking or doing some of these things that might be causing more inflammation. And so, you know, inflammation, you don't always feel it. And so it's sort of this silent thing that causes havoc, so to speak, in your body. And one of the ones I think of most vividly in my brain is almost like when you eat certain things and they go into your bloodstream and they cause an inflammatory response, right? In your blood vessels. So just inflammation, we need to bring it down. We absolutely do. And this is what I see people do a lot of is they will lean into supplements. And turmeric's a great one, by the way, for inflammation, but they don't really give it a chance to work because they take a little bit of it and yet they're still doing all these other things that they do in their life that are creating the inflammation. And so it never gets a real good chance to try to do what it's intended to do. I think it's a great thing to add into your diet anyway, but we kind of want to bring down the exposures that's kind of creating the inflammation and then lean into something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the inflammation is so overlooked. I read a story in Time magazine once about inflammation. There's a guy who went to the emergency room and he was having tightness in his chest, and they kind of took some basic blood markers or initial scan and found nothing. No high cholesterol, no high blood pressure, none of that stuff. Um, and so they told him, okay, well, why don't you just go sit down and wait for a couple hours, and if you're still having issues, you know, come back up. And so he did that. Um, and 2 hours later, or however long, it was a long time, they kind of forgot about him. But he came back up and said, "Hey, I'm still really having issues." And so they took him back, ran a more thorough scan, and realized he was having like a huge heart attack.
Mm.
And what was interesting is there was no precursors, no traditional like warning signs, but there was a really high level of inflammation. And what the article said is, you know, actually a majority of heart attacks happen in people that don't have high cholesterol. So the minority, like if you have high cholesterol and you have a heart attack, then you're in the minority of people that have heart attacks. But what most people do have is inflammation. And so it's not usually the thing that causes it, but it's usually on the scene, so to speak, with, caught red-handed, sort of um, a very prominent suspect, really accelerating and driving all sorts of things like heart disease, but also, Alzheimer's, memory issues, um, you know, diabetes, pulmonary
Yeah.
issues,
Yeah,
obviously autoimmune issues.
and I can tell you, I do a little bit of gut testing, as you know, in our practice, and I often see inflammation markers in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not uncommon. There's something that's, going on, the foods they're eating or constipation or digestive issues having that's causing inflammation, the markers in the gut. And, some people feel to have symptoms and many do not. Okay, and this is what I think is so interesting about it, yet those markers are still high. So it definitely is. And the thing is we want to address it before they start having issues, right? So so it's not causing damage, but if you think about something like diverticulitis, anything with an itis at the end means it's inflamed. Um, that's very, very painful. Well, that's an extreme case of inflammation, but there were probably low levels of that before you ever had that attack. And so, like you said, with the heart attack, I think that's a really interesting story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then kind of just to wrap those three things up, obviously if you have inflammation, that's going to cause more stress in the body. If you have stress, your hormones are going to be out of balance, right? And that's just one example of kind of that delicate balance too.
Yeah. No, they're all related. And this is what I want people to really start paying attention to because we're so as a society, we're so focused on just the one thing. And if you even think about how medicines or supplements or something work, we find, let's use turmeric as an example. We're like, oh, turmeric, people, it's a great spice to use as you cook. It's in curry, all these things. And instead of just using it in that very natural way, we we hone in on what is it about that one thing that really works, and they come up with curcumin, right? So they pull that out and they put that in a pill and then offer it to people because they can make money on it, when in fact synergistically we don't know how many of these things work together to really help create the result that we know it creates. And this is true of just some of these things like stress hormones and inflammation. You know, we want to address them all because we know they have a role in our wellness. Okay. And what ratio, I don't know, but we want to look at them all. And that's why we focus on lifestyle based healing, because it's not just that one thing. It's that, again, that puzzle. And we're trying to figure out, because the picture of wellness, that puzzle picture, is different for each person. So what pieces do we need to put in to get, you to where you want to be and me to where I want to be and someone else to where they want to be? That's the crucial part, because we all have the same body parts mostly, but we're all put together and also very individual. And so you need a very individualized approach.
Yeah, and so I would argue if it doesn't include these three things, or if it's taking a narrow look, it's probably not what I would consider a lifestyle based approach. A lifestyle based approach, a lifestyle based healing incorporates the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, I think that about sums it up. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's great. And I think that's sort of the work people have to start doing, right? Is start looking at um, how are those factors affecting
And how
my,
it's affecting, how it's influencing you, your body,
yeah,
and your situation.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So,
Cool. Let them know where they can find us.
oh yeah, if you're interested, you can find us at therevitalizedcenter.com. And shoot us, you can check out our website, you can shoot us an email.
Subscribe
Uh,
to wherever you're
Oh,
finding this at.
subscribe to our podcast. Absolutely. Listen more about, we're going to have more coming. Just really appreciate you being here. Share us with people that you are interested in lifestyle-based healing. And so glad you joined us.
Yeah, our next one's going to be on kind of really zeroing in on what we find works for our clients, what we find works in our practice and for ourselves, in terms of a strategy to actually put these puzzle pieces together. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye.